The expansion effect. How bold belief builds limitless results, written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. The only limits in our life are those we impose on ourselves. Bob Proctor. Let's start with something simple, but powerful. Your life is not a fixed equation. It's a living, breathing reflection of what you believe is possible. The expansion effect is not just a concept, it's a lens, a way of seeing the world. A way of seeing yourself that stretches past fear, doubt, and every recycled story you've inherited about what's realistic. This book isn't about hustle or hype. It's about power. Quiet power. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that gets built, moment by moment, from the inside out. At some point you've felt it. That subtle but undeniable whisper inside you that says there's more. More to say. More to build. More to become. But the world teaches you to ignore that voice, and to shrink it. Try to postpone it until you've earned the right to listen. And so most people stay stuck, playing small games with big dreams, mistaking survival for success. But not you. Not anymore. This book isn't here to give you something new, it's here to activate what's already been there all along. The belief that when you stop waiting to feel ready and start moving like the outcome is inevitable, the entire game changes. It's not magic. It's alignment. And it's available to you now. Through stories, principles, and small daily shifts, we'll unpack how bold belief rewires your results. You'll see that the moment you commit, truly commit, to a bigger version of your life, life responds. You don't need permission. You need a decision. So take a breath. Set down the weight of your doubts and lean in. Because once you step into this way of thinking, there's no one seeing it, no one feeling it. You expand, and the world expands with you. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The inevitable shift. You know that feeling right before something big happens, when something in your gut clicks into place and suddenly, nothing feels optional anymore? That's what we're talking about here. It's the moment your belief shifts from "I hope this works" to "this is already mine." Something changes. The doubt doesn't disappear, but it gets quieter. You don't need to see the whole path anymore, you just start walking like the outcome is inevitable. Let's call it what it is, the shift. It's not loud or dramatic. There's no fireworks. Most people won't even notice it when it happens to you, but everything inside you realigns. You stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for external proof. You stop stalling. And the world, funny enough, starts responding in ways it never did before. Belief is not about having a perfect plan. It's about making a decision that who you were yesterday is too small for where you're going. It's like lighting a match in a dark room. You're not just seeing the flame, you're suddenly seeing the space around you that was always there, but hidden. That's what belief does. It doesn't just illuminate, it expands. Which spans? Walt Disney was told his ideas were too ambitious. Oprah was told she wasn't right for TV. Neither of them argued. They expanded. They let their vision stretch bigger than the criticism. And they acted like their future was already built, they just hadn't moved in yet. You and I, we've been taught to play it safe, to hedge our hopes with disclaimers. To want something, but not too much, to prepare for failure just in case. But let me ask you, how's that working? How much brilliance gets buried under cautious dreaming? How many chances do we miss because we're waiting to feel ready, confident, certified? The shift doesn't come when you have all the answers, it comes when you stop needing them. It's when you decide deeply that you are done living like your potential is negotiable. This is not a pep talk. This is strategy. Because until your belief becomes bold, your actions will stay small. And small actions don't open big doors. The expansion effect starts the moment you treat belief like a verb. It's not just something you hold, it's something you move with. When you walk like it's already yours, speak like it's already happening, and build like the outcome is inevitable, you trigger a kind of energetic chain reaction. People notice. Opportunities stick, momentum builds. And you realize, it was never about certainty, it was about commitment. Think back. You've already had moments like this. Maybe you didn't name them, but you felt them. When you left the job without a backup plan, when you launched the idea before it was perfect, when you said yes even though everything in your head was screaming no, and looking back. Those moments didn't break you, they built you. That wasn't recklessness. That was belief outrunning fear. So let's start right there. With that version of you, the one who acts from inevitability, not insecurity. The one who knows that bold belief doesn't guarantee comfort, but it does guarantee change. You don't need more time, more credentials, or more approval. You need the shift. And now that you've felt it, even just a flicker, you can't unfeel it. You're not here to play it safe. You're here to expand, so make the shift. Decide that what's coming is already on its way. And then move like someone who knows the ending, because you do. You're the one writing it. Chapter 2. Becoming the frequency you seek. Most people think belief is something you have, like a feeling that arrives when everything finally lines up. But belief, real belief, isn't something you wait for. It's something you generate. And the way you do that is by becoming the frequency of the future you want. Let's get real. Everything in life responds to energy, not the vague, mystical kind. The tangible kind. The kind you carry in a room. The kind people feel when you speak. The kind that lingers after you leave. It's your tone, your posture, your conviction, your clarity. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. It's not what you do, it's the way you do it. That's your frequency. And most people are unknowingly tuned to the wrong one. When you walk around doubting yourself, second-guessing every move, you're sending out a signal, and the world reflects it right back. The opportunities you attract will match your indecision. The people around you will mirror your hesitation. You'll keep getting what you already expect, because expectation sets the tone, always. But here's the truth that flips everything. When you change your frequency, you change your field. The people, places, and possibilities that felt out of reach, they start to recognize you. Not because they suddenly changed, but because you did. It's like tuning a radio. If you're on 88.1 but the music you want is playing on 105.7, no amount of hoping or waiting will bring it through the static. You have to adjust the dial. And that dial? It's your belief, your behavior, your boundaries. When you start showing up like the person who already has what you want, the station comes in clear, and you stop chasing, because now you're attracting. We all know someone who walks into a room and shifts the vibe instantly, not because they're loud or flashy, but because they're clear. There's no internal tug-of-war happening inside them. They've decided who they are and what they're here for. And that kind of energy? It's magnetic. You don't need to fake it. You don't need to pretend. You just need to become it, bit by bit. Every time you speak from truth instead of fear, you tune up. Every time you choose alignment over approval, you tune in. Every time you take a step that scares you but excites you, you raise your frequency. When I started shifting into this mindset, things that used to feel like hard work started to feel like flow. People came out of nowhere. Emails I'd sent weeks ago suddenly got answered, projects moved. Connections clicked. It wasn't magic, it was alignment. I wasn't pushing anymore. I was matching, and that changed everything. You don't have to wait until you're fearless to act. You don't have to wait until it's all figured out. You just have to decide that your current frequency is too low for where you're headed, and start turning the dial. Let yourself feel into the version of you that already lives the life you're building. How do they walk? What do they say yes to? What do they let go of? Start now. Start small. Speak one thing with more certainty today. Say no to something that doesn't match your expansion. Move like someone who believes the outcome is coming, not because of luck, but because you're meeting it halfway. Remember, belief isn't found, it's tuned. You're the transmitter, you're the antenna, and the clearer your signal, the louder your results. You're not here to beg for better. You're here to broadcast brilliance. So turn the dial. And don't be surprised when everything starts showing up differently. It's not the world that changed, it's you. Chapter 3. Playing to win instead of playing not to lose. Most people think they're going after success, but really they're just trying not to fail. It looks similar on the outside: ambition, goals, busy calendars, but the internal game is completely different. One is rooted in expansion, the other in protection. One is fueled by possibility, the other by fear. And the difference in results? Massive. When you're playing not to lose, you're cautious. You ask for just enough. You wait for proof. You scan for signs of danger. You build backup plans for backup plans. And while all of that feels responsible, what it really does is keep you looping in the familiar. Playing not to lose is a closed loop. It's rooted in doubt. You're making moves, sure, but every one of them is filtered through a lens of self-preservation. Now let's flip it. Playing to win is a different frequency. It doesn't mean reckless, it means intentional. It means you're driven by vision, not fear. You're not tiptoeing around what might go wrong, you're chasing what could go right. You're not trying to avoid failure, you're aiming at something bigger than your comfort zone. And that shift? It changes how you show up in every room, every conversation, every decision. Think about the way athletes perform when they're trying to protect a lead versus when they're going after a win. The energy is completely different. One plays tight. The other plays free. One is reacting. The other is creating. And the outcome almost always favors the one willing to risk more, trust more, believe more. We've been conditioned to think that asking for more impact, more income, more joy is greedy or unrealistic. So we shrink. We ask for just enough not to be disappointed. We negotiate with our dreams. We lower the bar so we won't feel the sting if we fall short. But playing small doesn't protect you from pain, it just guarantees regret. You weren't built to manage mediocrity, you were built to create momentum, and that requires boldness. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that decides. The kind that looks at the dream and says, "Let's go," even before it makes sense. The kind that makes peace with the fact that risk is not the enemy, stagnation is. I've seen it firsthand. The clients who break through aren't the ones with the best resumes. They're the ones who stop playing defense with their lives. They stop waiting for permission. They stop needing everything to feel safe, and they go all in, not because they're fearless, but because they're tired of playing half speed in a life they want to feel full. Playing to win means betting on yourself fully. It means not watering down your vision to make it more digestible for other people. It means setting goals that stretch you, scare you, and excite you all at once. And it means trusting that even if you fall short, you're still further than if you never moved. Here's the hard truth: trying not to lose is still a loss. It's a loss of energy, a loss of alignment, a loss of time you'll never get back. But playing to win? That's expansion. That's momentum. That's what pulls in the resources, the connections, the clarity. So what are you doing right now, really? Are you avoiding a fall, or chasing a future? Are you moving to protect what you have, or to create what you want? Only one of those paths leads to the version of you haven't met yet. Let's stop rehearsing failure. Let's start rehearsing boldness. It's time to stop playing small games with big dreams. Step off the sidelines, get back in the arena, and play to win. You're more than ready. Chapter 4. Bold belief in a world built on doubt. Everywhere you look, doubt is the default. It's baked into the culture. We admire confidence but reward caution. We're told to dream big, but only if we can back it up with spreadsheets and safe plans. From an early age, we're trained to be realistic, to color inside the lines, to measure twice before even daring to cut. And if you dare to step outside that framework, if you speak your vision out loud before it's proven, you're labeled naive, delusional, even arrogant. That's the world we're raised in. And yet, bold belief has built every meaningful thing you see around you. Every innovation, every movement, every piece of progress came from someone who believed in something before there was proof, or before there was evidence, before there was applause, and almost every time, that belief was ridiculed before it was respected. If you're going to build a life that defies the ordinary, you have to get used to standing in rooms where your belief feels out of place. You have to get comfortable with being misunderstood. Because bold belief makes people uncomfortable, especially the ones who have settled into doubt as a lifestyle. Your clarity can feel like confrontation to someone still clinging to their excuses. Your momentum can feel threatening to someone stuck in the cycle of hesitation. But that doesn't mean you shrink. That means you anchor deeper. Bold belief isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need a megaphone or a stage. What it needs is consistency. What it needs is evidence in motion. Belief is built one aligned step at a time. And the bolder it is, the more resistance you'll face, not because you're wrong, but because you're doing something right. Look at anyone who's created something meaningful. They all have a version of the same story. The moment they went all in, the world pushed back. Friends distanced. Critics got louder. Doubts crept in. But they didn't retreat. They held the vision tighter. They understood that belief is tested, not gifted. That's the world we're operating in, one where you'll be asked to prove yourself before you're even allowed to try. One where play it safe is the mantra passed down like wisdom. But you weren't built for safe. You were built for stretch. You were built for vision, and belief, bold, anchored, fully embodied belief, is the ignition. You don't need everyone to get it. You don't need mass approval. You need to trust yourself in a way that doesn't waver just because someone else can't see what you see. Your dream wasn't sent to them. It was sent to you. That makes you the steward, the architect, the builder. And builders don't wait for permission, they pour the foundation. You're going to get strange looks. You're going to hear, "Are you sure?" more times than you can count. You're going to be tempted to dial it down just to fit in. Don't. Every time you water down your belief to make other people comfortable, you lose a piece of your future. And you didn't come this far to blend in, you came to expand. You came to shake things up. You came to show what's possible when someone believes deeply, moves boldly, and doesn't flinch in the face of doubt. This world may have been built on caution, but the next world, the one you're helping create, is built on boldness. So stand tall in your vision. Don't just hold the belief, be it. Let your actions speak it. Let your energy carry it. And watch what happens when you stop waiting for the world to believe in you and start believing so boldly that the world has no choice but to follow. Chapter 5. The Expansion Effect Defined. By now you've felt pieces of it, the flicker of belief, the shift in perspective, the bold decision to move when doubt says wait. But what you're really beginning to tap into is something deeper, something structural, something we've been circling from every angle. It's time to name it fully. This is the expansion effect. The expansion effect is what happens when belief moves from concept to embodiment, when it stops being a wish and becomes a frequency. It's the ripple that begins inside your mindset and spreads into your habits, your decisions, your energy, and eventually, your results. It starts subtle, like a crack in the wall of your old thinking, but over time, it becomes undeniable. What once felt out of reach begins to feel normal. What used to intimidate you now invites you. The world doesn't shift first, you do, and then, slowly but surely, everything around you adjusts to meet the new you. Think of it like roots under the surface. At first there's nothing visible, just a decision. A belief planted quietly. But if that belief is bold, fed with focus, watered by action, strengthened with repetition, it starts to grow. Not just in one direction, but outward, downward, everywhere. And as it expands beneath, it creates the space for something above to rise, the breakthrough, the visibility, the result, but only after the roots run deep. This is why so many people give up right before it gets good. They've planted something bold, but when they don't see immediate growth, they assume it's not working. They dig it up. They question the soil. They compare their garden to someone else's. What they don't realize is that expansion starts invisible, quiet, internal. And then, without warning, it becomes exponential. I've watched this unfold in real time. Clients who wrestled with imposter syndrome for years suddenly find themselves speaking on stages they used to sit in the back of. Entrepreneurs who once hesitated to post online now lead thriving communities. Not because they got lucky, but because their inner shift reached a tipping point. They expanded so deeply on the inside that the outside had no choice but to follow. Here's the formula, as simple as I can make it. Clarity plus conviction, multiplied by consistent aligned action, equals expansion. Not just more effort. Not just hustle, but intentional momentum driven by bold belief. When that formula is lived, not just understood, it changes the game. You stop forcing. You start flowing. The opportunities that match your new identity begin to find you, not by accident, but by resonance. The expansion effect isn't about faking confidence. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about choosing to become the version of yourself that already lives in the future you're building. It's about showing up like it's already happening, not to impress anyone, but to align with what's already true at your core. Once that belief clicks, you don't need constant validation. You don't chase. You attract. And you don't second-guess every move. You move with rhythm, with purpose, with trust. It doesn't mean you won't stumble. It means you'll know how to keep going, because you've anchored into something real. So when we talk about expansion, we're not talking about surface-level motivation. We're talking about transformation, deep, energetic, identity-level shifts that ripple into everything you touch. That's what this book is about. That's what you're stepping into. And if you're willing to keep watering what you've planted, especially when it's hard, especially when it's quiet, you'll wake up one day and realize you've become someone you used to admire from a distance. That's the expansion effect. Now that you've named it, you can use it, build with it, become it, and trust that it's already working, even before the results arrive. Chapter 6. Rewiring your inner narrative. The most powerful stories are not the ones we tell the world. They're the ones we tell ourselves. Quietly, daily, on repeat. And most of them are outdated. Built in moments of fear, failure, or survival. We didn't mean to build them. We just never questioned them. But if you want bold belief to stick, you have to start where it actually lives, inside your narrative. You've heard it before. I'm not ready. I'm not good at that. I always mess this up. I'm not that kind of person. These aren't facts. They're echoes. Ghosts of past moments that became rules without permission, and until you challenge them, they'll keep running your life. The results you're getting now? They're built on the stories you've been living by. Change the story, and the outcome changes too. Most people think they need to do more to transform, but real change starts in the being, in the way you identify. The way you label yourself in your own head. Your identity is like the thermostat for your actions. You can take massive action, but if your internal setting is still not enough, your progress will self-correct back to your belief. That's why so many people sabotage their own momentum, not because they're broken, but because their story is. But here's the good news: you can rewrite the narrative. You can question the script. You can interrupt the cycle. It starts with awareness. Notice the phrases that come out of your mouth without thinking. The quiet beliefs that surface in challenge or success. The patterns you justify, but secretly resent. Once you see them, you can speak back to them. Rewiring doesn't mean pretending everything is great. It means replacing falsehood with truth. It means choosing language that supports expansion instead of restriction. Instead of "I'm bad with money," try "I'm learning how to manage and multiply wealth." Instead of "I always procrastinate," try "I'm becoming someone who takes aligned action fast." Your brain listens, your body follows, and the repetition creates a new baseline. One of the most powerful things you can do is upgrade your I am statements. They're not just descriptors, they're declarations. Every time you say "I am," you're casting a vote for your identity. So choose wisely. Speak from your future, not your fear. You don't have to feel it fully yet. Just speak it like it's already forming, because it is. I remember coaching someone who always said, "I'm not a leader." Every sentence, every story, she'd find a way to reinforce that belief. But when we looked at her life, she was already leading, quietly, powerfully, consistently. Her issue wasn't a lack of leadership. It was a narrative lag. Her story hadn't caught up with her reality. We rewrote her inner language. At first it felt awkward, but within weeks, her presence changed, her decisions changed, and eventually, so did her opportunities. This is how transformation happens. You don't just wake up one day fully rewired. You choose, day by day, thought by thought, to stop feeding the voice of limitation and start amplifying the voice of truth. You write the new story in real time, with every action, every choice, every moment you speak to yourself with more honesty, more compassion, more courage. The expansion effect lives or dies in the story you carry. So take the pen back. Stop quoting your past and start narrating your future. Your inner voice doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be aligned. And if you keep showing up for that alignment, your external world will start to reflect it in ways you never saw coming. Speak it, live it, become it. That's how belief becomes reality. Chapter 7. Conviction over confidence. Confidence is overrated. There, I said it. Not because it's useless, it's not. But because we've put it on a pedestal it doesn't belong on. We act like confidence is the entry ticket, the prerequisite, the thing we need before we take the leap. So we wait, we stall, we train ourselves to believe we have to feel ready before we can act. And that belief? It's the silent killer of dreams. Confidence is a result, not a requirement. It comes after the reps, after the stretch, after the action. Confidence is built through evidence, through movement. Through falling forward and realizing you didn't break, and waiting for it before you move is like waiting to get strong before going to the gym. It doesn't work like that. What you need first isn't confidence, it's conviction. Conviction doesn't wait to feel ready. It decides. It's the inner certainty that says, this is mine to do. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble. Conviction walks in the room before confidence is even dressed. And more often than not, it's conviction that gets noticed, that gets remembered, that gets results. I've seen people with zero experience but pure conviction walk into spaces they technically weren't qualified for, and win. Not because they faked it, but because they carried an energy that said, I belong here, and I'm willing to prove it. Conviction is magnetic. It tells the world, watch me figure it out, and that energy? It moves mountains. Confidence waits for feedback. Conviction creates it. Confidence hopes for approval. Conviction doesn't need permission. That's the difference. One is reactive. The other is generative. And the truth is, if you only act when you feel confident, you'll never grow. Because the most meaningful expansion lives on the other side of uncertainty. Conviction doesn't mean you never doubt. It means you don't let doubt decide. It means you keep showing up, keep speaking up, keep building, even when the voice in your head is throwing every excuse it can at you. Conviction is when your why is louder than your worry. It's when the vision is more vivid than the fear. People think they need to feel like a leader before they lead. But leadership is born in the doing. It's built through consistency, through small acts of courage stacked on top of each other. The same goes for entrepreneurship, for creativity, for love, for any meaningful pursuit. You don't wait for the feeling. You become the thing through the doing. That's conviction. That's the start of all expansion. When I first launched my work, I didn't feel confident, I felt exposed. But I had conviction. I knew what I was here to say. I knew it mattered. I knew someone needed to hear it. And that knowing got me through the awkward videos, the crickets on early posts, the moments where nothing seemed to land. Over time, the confidence came. But conviction? That's what got me out of bed. So let go of the myth that you need to feel bulletproof before you move. You don't. You just need a spark. A reason. A truth strong enough to stand on, even if your knees wobble. Speak before you feel ready. Show up before you feel seen. Move before the fear finishes its sentence. That's how you grow into the version of you that already exists on the other side of doubt. Confidence is the echo. Conviction is the voice. Be the voice. Let your actions speak before your nerves catch up, and watch what happens when you stop waiting to feel ready and start moving like you already are. Chapter 8. Vision that scares you a little. If your vision doesn't scare you just a little, it's probably not big enough. That edge, that flutter in your chest, the voice that says, who do you think you are? That's the signal. Not to back away, but to lean in, because fear isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's confirmation. It means you're touching something real, something alive, something that matters. We've been told to dream within reason, to keep our goals practical, safe, digestible. Vision boards filled with things we believe we're allowed to want, not the things that really light us up. And yet, the dreams that scare us a little, they're the ones wired to wake us up. They activate us. They challenge the parts of us we've outgrown. They call us to grow into someone we've never been before. A bold vision isn't a fantasy. It's a declaration. It's you saying, I'm willing to become someone bigger than my current circumstances, not bigger in ego. Bigger in capacity, bigger in courage. Bigger in impact, and that kind of vision doesn't whisper. It roars. Quietly at first, maybe, but it gets louder every time you say yes to it. Think about it. What would your life look like if you stopped filtering your vision through fear? If you stopped shrinking it to make it palatable to the people around you? If you gave yourself full permission to name what you really want, without editing or apologizing? Most people never do. Not because they don't have dreams, but because they don't believe they're allowed to have them. Your vision is not random. It's a clue, it's a blueprint folded inside you, and the more you ignore it, the heavier it gets. The more you chase smaller goals just to feel safe, the more out of sync you become with yourself. That's why success without alignment feels empty. Because deep down you know you were built for more, and you settled for less. So let's bring it into focus. What do you really want? Not just the metrics or milestones, but the life that lives underneath them. The mornings you want to wake up to. The people you want to serve. The work that leaves you proud and lit up and a little scared. Because that fear? That's your expansion talking. That's your future asking you to stretch. Write it down. Say it out loud. Even if your voice shakes, especially if it does. Speak the version of the dream that makes your stomach flip, not because it's impossible, but because it's bigger than what you've allowed yourself to believe. And then ask yourself, what would that version of me do next? That's the secret. Vision without action is just a wish, but vision paired with even the smallest act of alignment becomes momentum. And that momentum? It compounds. One brave step leads to the next. One bold conversation opens a door. One aligned yes breaks a pattern. And suddenly, the vision that once scared you starts to feel like home. You don't need to know how it all works yet. You just need to name it, believe it's meant for you, and start building it one decision at a time. Let the size of the vision scare you a little. That's good. That means it has room to grow you. Let it be bigger than your doubt. Let it challenge your logic. Let it raise your standards. Because the version of you who lives that vision, they're already in there, waiting. Not for the fear to go away, but for you to move in spite of it. That's how expansion works. That's how you become someone who doesn't just dream big, but builds it. Chapter 9. The Resistance Threshold. Every time you stretch, resistance shows up. Not because you're weak or unprepared, but because you're entering territory your nervous system doesn't recognize yet. That tension you feel when you try to do something new, bold, or wildly different from what you've done before. That's the threshold. It's the moment when your old self tries to negotiate with your new self, and the only way through is forward. Most people mistake resistance for a red flag. They feel discomfort and assume they're doing something wrong. So they pull back, slow down, retreat into the familiar. They wait for the fear to quiet before they act again. But that's the trap. Because resistance isn't a stop sign. It's a checkpoint. It's the price of admission for transformation. You've probably felt it. You get a spark of momentum, start showing up more boldly, speak a truth you used to swallow, take a leap you've been avoiding, and suddenly the noise starts. You question your timing. You second-guess your words. You compare yourself to people 10 steps ahead. Old patterns come knocking, dressed like logic. It's not coincidence. It's a pattern. Growth wakes up the parts of you that were built to keep you safe, not successful. This is the resistance threshold, and it's where most people quit. Not because they can't grow, but because they don't recognize the discomfort as part of the process. They confuse the turbulence of transformation with the signal to abort. But you're learning to see it differently, to expect it. To meet it like a sparring partner, not a threat. Resistance doesn't mean you're off track. It means you're on the edge of something important, and the edge is where new capacity is born. Just like muscles grow by being pushed to the point of strain, your mindset expands when it's challenged by unfamiliar belief. The question is, will you keep going when the old programming flares up? There's always a moment in the journey where the doubt gets loud, the outcomes are unclear, and the path feels foggy. This is the stretch zone, where your vision outruns your evidence. It's where belief is tested in the most intimate way, not by external opposition, but by internal dialogue. And if you've come this far, you're already stronger than the resistance wants you to believe. The key is to normalize the friction, expect the pushback, celebrate the nerves. Not because struggle is the goal, but because it means you're not standing still. It means you're evolving. And every time you meet resistance and move anyway, you rewrite the code that once held you back. Think back to a time you wanted something badly but stopped right before the breakthrough. What pulled you away? What story did you believe? Now imagine if you had kept going, through the awkwardness, through the uncertainty, through the silence. Imagine who you'd be now if you'd walked through the threshold instead of turning around. That version of you? Still possible, still within reach. You don't need to eliminate resistance, you need to outlast it. To feel it rise and choose anyway. That's where power is forged. In the moment where you say, I see the fear, I hear the doubt. But they don't drive this vehicle anymore. You keep building. You keep speaking. You keep trusting. And the more you do, the quieter the resistance becomes. Growth isn't just about expansion. It's about endurance, holding your ground when the old stories beg you to shrink. You're at the threshold now. Everything you want is on the other side of staying with it. So breathe, lean in, and cross. Chapter 10. Bold is built daily. Boldness isn't a personality trait. It's a habit. A practice. A decision you make over and over again until it becomes how you move, how you speak, how you build. Most people think boldness shows up in the big moments, the pitch, the leap, the launch. But the truth is, it's born in the smallest choices. It's built in the quiet spaces where no one is watching. You don't become bold by waiting for some perfect flash of confidence. You become bold by choosing to act before you feel fully ready. You become bold by pressing publish when your hand is still shaking, by saying no when it would be easier to people please, by sticking to your morning routine even when your motivation is gone. Boldness isn't about hype, it's about integrity. Doing what future you would thank you for, even when present you wants to hide. That's the part no one glamorizes. The early mornings, and the hard conversations. The days where it feels like nothing's working, but you show up anyway. That's where boldness earns its muscle. Not when you're inspired, but when you're tested. Not when the outcome is certain, but when you choose to believe anyway. Expansion isn't a single decision. It's hundreds, and they add up fast. Every day you're casting votes for the kind of person you're becoming. You're either reinforcing the version of you that doubts, delays, and defers, or the one who decides, declares, and delivers. One email, one choice, one action. That's all it takes to tilt the scale in your favor. You don't need a massive breakthrough. You need a rhythm. Something sustainable, something simple. A way to show your brain, over and over again, that you are the kind of person who moves forward, even when it's inconvenient. That's what rewires your default setting. That's what turns boldness from a buzzword into a baseline. I call it your expansion ritual. It's not a rigid checklist. It's a set of daily agreements between you and your future. Things that don't just sound good, but actually shift your state. A short morning routine to anchor your intention. A block of protected time for creative work. A post that shares your voice even when no one's clapping yet. A daily walk where you visualize your next level. These aren't chores. They're identity shapers. Every time you keep one of those agreements, your trust in yourself compounds. That's the secret. The bolder you want to become, the more you have to trust yourself to follow through, not perfectly, not without setbacks, but consistently enough to know that momentum is still moving. There's nothing sexy about discipline at first, but boldness without structure burns out. It fizzles. It becomes a burst of motivation that fades when life gets busy. That's why we build boldness into the bones of your day, not as a sprint, but as a lifestyle. Because when boldness becomes your default, your world responds differently. People listen. Doors open. You stop asking for permission and start setting the tone. Let's make this practical. What's one thing you can do every day that reinforces the belief that you're expanding? Not 10 things. 1. Start there. Do it when it's boring. Do it when it's hard. Do it when no one claps, because boldness doesn't need applause. It needs consistency. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to build the habit of acting like the version of you who already exists on the other side of doubt. Bold isn't something you are. It's something you practice, and the more you practice, the more it becomes who you are. Chapter 11. Expansion in action, real-world results. It's one thing to believe in the expansion effect as a concept. It's another to watch it unfold in real life. When belief shifts into action, and that action compounds, something changes. You don't just think differently, you operate differently, and people around you start to notice. The world rearranges itself to match your new rhythm. Let me show you what that looks like. There's Olivia. She spent years sitting on an idea for a podcast. She'd recorded episodes and deleted them, bought the mic, stared at the hosting platform, always stopped short. What if no one listens? That was the loop in her head. But something clicked after we talked. She didn't need the confidence to launch, she needed the conviction to move anyway. She recorded one more episode, posted it, and told no one. Then another. By the 5th episode, she shared it on Instagram. That post led to her first speaking gig. Then a brand reached out. Now she has a growing audience and an offer to syndicate her show, not because she was the best, but because she started. There's Marcus, corporate guy, 30 years old, brilliant, but quietly miserable. He journaled for years about starting a coaching practice, but kept telling himself it was too late to switch lanes. "I'm not ready" was his script. But he decided to run a free workshop. 10 people showed up, then 25 to the next. He launched a simple offer and 3 people signed up. Today he's full-time and scaling. The expansion effect wasn't a miracle. It was a shift in identity that led to daily action. That workshop wasn't just an event. It was the moment he stopped waiting for his life to change and started changing it himself. There's Tara. She was stuck in perfectionism. She had a dream to launch a design studio but kept tweaking her website and logo, never going live. We broke it down. What's one bold move you've been avoiding? She emailed 3 potential clients with a simple message. "I'm launching. I'd love to work with you." 2 replied. 1 said yes. That client led to a referral, then another. She stopped waiting to feel legit and just decided she already was. The business was always possible. It just needed her to move. These aren't fairy tales. They're not the exception. They're the product of people applying the expansion effect in small, bold ways, not with perfect plans, but with persistent movement. They shifted the frequency they operated on, and the world responded. What's consistent in every story isn't talent or timing, it's willingness. A decision to stop letting fear narrate the next chapter, a commitment to act before the doubt dissolved. A choice to believe in possibility long enough for it to become reality. That's the thread, that's the common denominator, and it's available to you too. You don't have to start big. Most expansion begins with a whisper, a text you send, a video you post, a door you knock on, a risk you take, one that scares you a little but aligns with who you're becoming. From the outside, it might look like a small moment, but on the inside, it's a new identity taking root. You've felt the shift by now. You've seen the edge. The question is whether you'll step through it. You're not waiting for permission. You're waiting for the decision. The one that says, "I'm in, fully. Me is." Finally. And once that happens, the real-world results won't feel like luck. They'll feel earned. Because they were. Chapter 12. The point of no return. There's a moment in every transformation where going back isn't just impossible. It's unthinkable. Not because everything's perfect or finished, but because something in you has fundamentally shifted. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't unsee the vision that's been forming. You've stepped into a new version of yourself. This is the point of no return. Not the dramatic kind. Not the movie scene version where everything explodes in the background and you walk away in slow motion. This one is quieter. It lives in your decisions, in your energy. In the way you no longer entertain the doubts that once ran your life. You still hear them, but they don't get a vote anymore. You've built something stronger: clarity, conviction, consistency. This entire journey has been about more than belief. It's been about becoming. You didn't just learn a framework, you lived it. You moved from waiting to acting, from hiding to showing up, from hoping to knowing. That's what the expansion effect does. It stretches you in ways you didn't expect. It introduces you to parts of yourself that were always there, just buried under hesitation and habit. You've felt the resistance, you've rewritten the inner script. You've made the small moves, taken the scary steps, leaned into vision that scared you a little. And now you're standing at a threshold you can't cross. That's not the end. It's the ignition, because expansion isn't a peak, it's a practice. And the point of no return isn't a finish line, it's a new starting point. So what now? You build, you speak, you lead, you continue showing up like someone who believes, not perfectly, not always confidently, but boldly, daily, on purpose. You make decisions that match the identity you've been building, you protect your energy, you edit your environment, you surround yourself with people who expand you, not shrink you. And you remember, belief is not a one-time event, it's a muscle. You flexed it here, but now it's time to lift heavier, to create bigger. To take this from theory to legacy. Whether that means launching the business, writing the book, making the move, changing the way you lead, or simply refusing to dim your light any longer, do it. Not someday. Not later. Now. Let this be the chapter where you stop circling the dream and start building it brick by brick. Let this be the moment where you stop asking what if it doesn't work and start asking what if it does. Let this be the line you draw between the version of you who hesitated and the version of you who owns the room, the stage, the mission. You don't owe the world a quiet, edited version of your potential. You owe yourself the truth of your own expansion, the one that doesn't fit in a box, the one that redefines what's possible, the one that leaves a mark. From here forward, you walk differently. You speak from a deeper place. You move like someone who already knows how the story ends, because you're writing it. You've crossed the threshold. There's no going back, and that's the point. So take the leap, make the call, share the vision, light the match, build the thing. Trust the momentum. The expansion effect is no longer just an idea. It's your way of being now. You've got the tools, you've got the spark. The next step is yours. This is the point of no return. And that's exactly where your limitless results begin. Take care and be well.